the Hare Krishnas were really, really out there for me. But I was also pretty out there, but in a different way, which meant that I was reasonably adventurous to go up to the temple there and in Rome Road, and I had paneer for the first time, and it was fantastic. They gave me a Bhagavad Gita. I never read it. I don't know what happened to that Bhagavad Gita. But I remember the paneer, and I was talking to the founder, one of the old blokes that was here with the beard and the walking stick.
Yes, Dayasara.
And he told me that about you being your father, being one of the founders, and he said to me that the milk came from the Adelaide Hills. It was unhomogenized and unpasteurized, and that I said that's why I've never had it as good, because that would be pretty amazing.
Yeah, that was common in those days to go to the farm and grab the milk.
Yeah. So apparently one of the devotees had the farm, and they used to get it from that particular devotee. But it was really, that's all I remember of it. I've never forgotten that paneer, and
But yes, my father joined the Hare Krishnas in 1977 in Mawullumba.
Yeah.
He was travelling up there with his mum. And then, again, the Hare Krishnas turned up in his life.
Yeah, so for me, I was living in Sydney and near Bondi Junction. I don't know if you're familiar with Bondi Junction.
Yes, yeah.
So I'm walking down Bondi Junction, and I'm self-absorbed, typical, male person, and the Hare Krishnas were doing the Harinam.
Yeah.
And say the Hare Krishnas, there might be 6 of them, from where you are to where you are. I walked past them from this point to that point. I just felt this calm. I thought, this is really weird, because my recollection of the Hare Krishnas was all the bad stuff, the murders, the pedophilia and all that, and I think this can't be true, So then I'm into denial, and I'm thinking, I'd really like to have this experience again. And so they appeared again, and the same thing happened. Then I thought, I'll just drop that stuff, and I just kept looking out for them, and wherever I went, that I felt this peace.
Yeah.
They were in, I don't know if you're familiar, there's a tunnel in Sydney from Adelaide Central to Pyrmont. So there's a 1 kilometre tunnel, underground tunnel, and so they would chant in there, and I used to go to university there, so I would, walk past them, and I felt this peace. I thought, this is odd, I never understood it. Long story short, I had to move back to Adelaide, and I thought, I want to get into meditation. And so I went in, I don't know how I ended up there. So I used to ride a push bike, and my brother lives in North Adelaide, so and when you ride a push bike, I used to ride through the back streets and all of that. And so I'm in this back street, just off the main drag in North Adelaide. There's a school there called Australian School of Meditation and Yoga. I thought, okay, this will do, And I look in the window, and there are pictures of Krishna and the pictures of Gopal. There are pictures of that particular version there. Oh, this is a bit weird for me, because I'm an Italian Australian, so anyway. So I thought, I'm going to join them. So that was in December. Came back on the January, and so I joined them on January 14, 2013. Next thing I know, I'm chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. These guys are disciples of Jagadguru Siddhiswarupananda Paramsa. So they were really, really lovely, They were really, really nice people. A few issues, you never get to see the Sri Siddhiswarupananda, apparently he's in hiding or he's whatever. I did read, anyway, so I'll get to you, I'll let you go, sorry. Anyway, so I loved it. Then I fell in love with a woman there, and she was much younger than me, and the woman that ran the show didn't like the fact that she was 17 years younger than me. So this big kerfuffle happened, I just got up and left. And then I prayed to Krishna, so what am I going to do, And these people appeared across the road with Krishna number plates, outside my house. I thought, oh, this is it. So, I asked them, and so they come here. So I started coming here, and this is kind of my entry into Krishna consciousness. And just getting back to Siddhiswarupananda, I was in the bookshop there. I worked in the bookshop for 3.5 years, and so I did a lot of reading. And you talked about remembering stuff. Well, in one ear and out the other. But I have not been involved for 5 years. But I'd read somewhere, and it was a quote, through the Srimad Bhagavatam, that Parahamsas don't initiate. And Srila Swarupananda Paramsa is a Paramsa, and that title was bestowed upon him by Srila Prabhupada, because he presented to Srila Prabhupada, I think at the age of 21, as a Mayavadi. He had, experience from the Leni rising and the whole thing, and then Srila Prabhupada recognised that and gave him the Parahamsa title, and I think he got to that point. But he was initiating, then he also got married and stuff, so all this stuff kind of seemed to be inconsistent with what I understood, a guru is supposed to be, like ISKCON, or a pure devotee is supposed to be like.
Yeah, but you could raise that as a question and we try and answer that.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, because there's lots of different questions. Hare Krishna?
Hare Krishna.
We haven't started yet,
Oh, okay.
I was just waiting for Bridget, and she's
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
There you go.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
You're recording, so I don't have to record it. I didn't know my cartels. So what's your familiarity with Bhagavad Gita, just so I know? Are you roughly familiar, or do you want to go?
I've read it nearly 5 times.
5 times?
Oh, nice.
I think it's 85 times. I thought, okay, that's
No,
coming along.
no, nearly 5.
85, yeah.
So I hadn't read it for a while. Every now and then,
Yeah.
when I come here, I'll go back and reference it. But this time I'll do it on database.
Yeah.
But yeah, I've got the blue covered version apparently. Yeah.
And the Macmillan version.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, that's fine. Oh, okay. So I can do an overview of Bhagavad Gita. We tend to do that every 4 or 5 weeks anyway. It's kind of the idea of this group is really to kind of give people firstly a place where they talk openly about the problems they're having in their bhakti.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's a part of it. So we try to create a culture of openness and the fact that we're all fallible and we don't have to kind of hide these things in the closet or something. And the other thing is to give an overview of the Bhagavad Gita as is presented by the ISKCON, Mayapur, or Bhakti University, effectively. So that's the way I'm trying to present it, and the way ISKCON wants it to be presented. And some very good people on that committee, Bhaktivinoda Swami and there was Kara Swami before he passed away. So there's been very good people on that committee. A lot of very eminent Swamis have put together something called a Bhakti Shastri course, and they teach Bhagavad Gita. So we try and do it from that point of view, but to really kind of develop a kind of more detailed familiarity with it, and then move into Bhagavatam when necessary, and really trying to help people progress their devotional service. That's the main aim of it. So not knowledge for the sake of knowledge or just burning things out, but actually, things which are relevant to improving your level of sadhana, improving your bhakti, and getting you closer to Krishna. That's really the ultimate purpose of this group. And any group should be to get you closer to Krishna. And I'm always open to critical feedback. My background is I'm a lawyer in Melbourne. I taught law at some of the top universities in the world. I was involved in this ISKCON since I was 5 years old. I've been worked on various projects throughout ISKCON and different temples, mainly in the UK and Europe, and I've been a bit in South Africa and so on. I'm about to set up 2 ISKCON temples from scratch, one in India and one in New Zealand, which I'm working on at the moment. So that's my sort of rough background. I've got a book coming up on Prabhupada in the new year, which is like an introduction to Prabhupada's writings and thinking and teachings. But I'm very open. I taught. A lot of my former law students are doing very well around the world. We're still in touch, and I'm sort of naturally comfortable in a classroom environment. Whether I'm any good at it or not is a different question. But I'm very open to aggressive questions or critical questioning, or I won't get offended. And I'm looking to learn as much as I was to say for law students, as much as they are. So it's an avenue for me to learn as well. So I appreciate people's participation, and it's also facilitating my own journey towards Krishna. So that's what we're trying to do here. So
Sounds good.
yeah, cool. Okay, so we normally just sing for 5 to 10 minutes, and the idea behind that is if you come from the outside world, there might be some contamination or some sort of material contamination, so we're trying to remove that a little bit. and then we can look at the Bhagavad Gita verse. We've been doing it roughly sequentially, but we can sort of do an overview of where we are and go into the verse. And then I've got a series of topics we're going to talk about. People have started posting questions on what they want to talk about. So, you know, the idea is eventually to get it led by people, by the group, not by me, what concerns them about everything going on in their lives and their bhakti. Cool. Yeah. So, I haven't got my cartons. Have you got some cartons?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you want to sing?
Huh?
Do you want to sing? If not, I'll sing. If you don't want to sing.
You can sing one, I'll sing another bit.
Yeah, you sing, yeah. Is that all?
Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama. Rama Rama
I'll go slowly, and then I'll hopefully work out where I need to pitch it.
Sure.
So if I overdo it, underdo it, you're bored, let me know. I'll put AI in my head so I can adjust my settings accordingly. So we'll be looking at a verse in a minute, but I'm just going to sort of do a little bit of overview before. No, I'll do the verse first. I have a spare here. We're going to look at chapter 18, verse 65. Talk about this verse. Put it in my laptop so I've got the...
What are we looking for?
Chapter 18, verse 65. One of you can drop it on the WhatsApp group if you want. I can do that now, sure. So everyone can have it on their phone or don't know.
85 or 65?
65. There isn't an 85. I'm going to put it in the group chat, so it's there on WhatsApp, if you need it. So this is the verse before the verse we did last week. Yeah? Chapter 1865. Yeah. It's on the group chat now. So.
This is coming on.
Yeah, Bhagavad. I think it's one of the top 10 verses cited by Bhagavad, and there's top 10 recited verses. See what there? Just bring up my notes. Okay. Have you found it?
Yes.
Yeah, you got it, yeah. Om Jnana Timrandasya Jnanam Jnanasalakya Tatsumritam Jnana Tasmai Sri Guru Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manopishtam Stapitam Yeda Bhutale Swayam Upadikadamayam Dati Swapandikam Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Yuta Padakamalam Sri Guru Vaishnavamscha Sri Rupam Sathiratam Sahagana Ramnavitam Tam Sajivam Savitam Sadhurutam Vajradaya Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padam Sahagana Lalita Sri Visa Kanvitam Scha He Krishna Skarma Sindhu Vinamado Jagapate Gopisa Gopikanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kancha Gaurangi Radha Vrindavasati Misabana Sutadevi Prananami Hari Priye Panchakasatriyascha Kripa Sindhu Evacha Vachitanaya Pavaneveo Vaishnaveo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Sivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. So just, and I've done this before, just for passages. So those are the prayers at the start of the Bhagavad Gita, and probably the starting point of looking at those prayers is that they are the five Goswamis on the fast starting points of those prayers. So this movement, as I said a few weeks ago, is really called the movement of Rupa Goswami, who's probably the critical figure in this manifestation of this movement. So he was the most eminent disciple, let's say, of Lord Chaitanya. Okay. So we are, although in the West, popularly we're known as Hare Krishnas, we are actually Rupa Nugas, the followers of Rupa Goswami. Rupa Goswami, Nuga to follow. So we're followers of Rupa Goswami. We'll talk about Rupa Goswami over the next few weeks. So I'll just read out the verse. Manmana Bhavamapapto Madhyaji Man Namaskaru Man Ivarisyasi Satyam Te Pratijane Priyosane. Always think of me, become my devotee, worship me, offer your homage unto me. Thus you will come to me without fail. I promise you this because you are my very dear friend. Someone else can read it out in English. Yes? Yeah, the English bit.
The most confidential part of knowledge is that one should become a pure devotee to Krishna and always think of him and act for him. One should not become an official mandatory. Life should be so molded that one will always have the chance to think of Krishna. One should always act in such a way that all his daily activities are connected with Krishna. He should arrange his life in such a way that throughout the 24 hours he cannot but think of Krishna.
Perfect. That's enough. Thank you. So, all throughout the Gita, we have this approach of these are important instructions. Krishna says to Arjuna, and then he says, then now they're even more important instructions. And then he'll say, they're even more important instructions. As even more confidential stuff. And all of this right at the end, at chapter 18, verse 64, he will say, now above all the things I've taught you, these final two things are the most important. Which is chapter 18, verse 65, and chapter 18, verse 66. Okay? Which is the idea of complete surrender. So we get there through a very careful process. So the Bhagavad Gita, as I said, is 18 chapters. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 700 verses. And it's like a sandwich. So that's the top piece of bread. And then you've got the bottom piece of bread. This bottom piece of bread is called jnana yoga, knowledge. Yoga means linked to Krishna. Knowledge is linked to Krishna. This is karma yoga. Okay. Action that is linked to Krishna. And the middle bit of the sandwich, the most important bit, is the bhakti yoga, devotion to Krishna. Devotional activities to Krishna. And then of all these chapters, that is the middle chapter. And of that chapter, the verse that's most important is 9.27, which we say pretty much every time we meet. Right? And this verse is pretty identical to this verse. So, that's Bhagavad Gita for you. And devotional life begins, really, this is the bridge, chapter 6, end of chapter 6, Karma Yoga, start of chapter 7. Yeah? Chapter 7 is when Arjuna doesn't speak. At the end of chapter 6, Krishna, in chapter 6, verse 47, talks about, this is about yoga, who's the highest yogi. Yeah? And what Prabhupada explains in the commentary to that verse is there's two elements that you have to get to. First one is Sakama Karma Yoga. Okay. That's a form of action linked to Krishna. And then the more important bit is Nishkama Karma Yoga. Okay. So Sakama Karma Yoga, simply put, is when you acknowledge God and you come and do something for God, but you want something in return. Right? So I want a bigger car, I come to the temple, I do an arti, I put some bananas down. Hopefully, I acknowledge Krishna is the absolute God. He will give me this car, hopefully. Right? So, my actions are linked to Krishna, but I want something in return. Sakama. Karma, also known as lust. My own lust, linked to Krishna. Krishna serves my own lust. So, then you go to Nishkama Karma. So, no lust. Action linked to Krishna. So that means you do it, you do actions, you get something in return, you give it to Krishna, you don't want anything. There's nothing you want materialistically from Krishna, or spiritually, you just want to do for Krishna. So Prabhupada explains, Bhakti Yoga really begins from this point onwards in one's thinking and actions. Okay? Yeah. Because this can't be devotional service because it's selfish. Okay? So, selfish. Okay? And nishkama, not selfish. Okay? Actions linked to God. Okay? So, as devotees, we are auditing our brain and how we approach God and how we approach our day-to-day lives. And we're looking at the level of non-selfish acts done for Krishna. That's our starting point to enter into the realm of Bhakti Yoga. Okay, to become devotees of the Lord. Okay, so God? Okay. So, what the Bhagavad Gita is explaining in Jnana Yoga, why it is, because Krishna is, he wants to help us. That's why he's spoken in the Bhagavad Gita. Why it is that this is so difficult. What is it about us that's created this difficulty with this, which should be our natural condition as ourselves as souls? And the answer to that is desire. We have wanted, at one point, we were in the spiritual world. This is all existence in Krishna. This is 25% of all living entities live in the material world, 75% in the spiritual world, roughly. Right? All we were doing in the spiritual world was doing everything for Krishna. Right? And eventually we wanted to go, Krishna's enjoying too much. I want to be like Krishna. So Krishna goes, oof, we went into the material world to learn how to go back to the condition of only wanting to enjoy for Krishna. Okay? So Prabhupada's big clue as to what's wrong with us is in the penultimate chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, penultimate paragraph of the Bhagavad Gita, in his purple, right, where he says that we have become a pleasure taker, and we need to go back to becoming a pleasure giver for the Lord, right? For the Lord's pleasure, okay? For the Lord. Pleasure taker. Nishkama Karma Yoga, I'm the pleasure taker from God, at least there God is recognised. Pleasure giver to the Lord. And because we're souls, our happiness only happens when we are giving pleasure to the Lord. We automatically enjoy happiness. Right? When we're enjoying for ourselves, we have something called the material illusion of happiness, right? Which is very temporary. Right? The material world is designed to frustrate us, so that eventually we get fed up. So millions of lives later, we'll be going, I've got old again, I've got ill again, I've got old again, I've got ill again, I've got old again. And eventually, hang on a minute, I kind of had enough of this. Right? What's actually going on here? It's like that film Groundhog Day, where Bill Murray wakes up every day and has to live the whole day again trying to marry this woman. I don't know if you've seen that movie, but it's sort of what we've been doing life after life after life. And in Jnana Yoga, we learned that all our propensities to enjoy have compounded over many lifetimes, right? To give us this body, right, which is formed of the physical body and the mind, the ego, and the intelligence, right? A subtle body. This has been granted by us from Krishna, depending on our actions in our previous lives. Right? So no existence of ours, not our personality, neither the hairs on our hands or the shape of our fingers exists without Krishna granting it to us to come into this world in this life. Okay? That's all the work we've done in our previous lives, good and bad. And what we're doing by chanting the Mahamantra, and I'm sort of summarising a huge amount of stuff here, is basically we're putting an end. Right? The bodies of the conditioned soul, the material world, is created by desires, which means enjoy for yourselves and not for Krishna. So by chanting this Mahamantra, you're putting an end to the echoes of millions of previous lives that have been absorbed by this chanting. Right? That's why people's lives have changed so much when they chant. They become more peaceful, become healthier. They become more able to deal with stress of other people they usually didn't like before, but now they can deal with them. Yeah? Because they're putting the end of all those echoes of previous lives to them. Okay? So what we are ultimately here to do, the material world was designed by the Lord. He didn't kill all the rebellious souls. Okay, I'm going to kill them all now because they're not enjoying with me. No, he loves every single living entity. So he's created the material world like a prison to reform them to go back to him. Okay? And the purpose of reading the Bhagavad Gita is to, as Prabhupada says at the end of the Bhagavad Gita, is to go from being a pleasure taker to be a pleasure giver to the Lord. That's all we're trying to do. That's the whole purpose of reading the Bhagavad Gita. Okay? So you're trying to understand it with that spirit in mind. That's the purpose of the book. Alright, okay. So, what is it that distances us from Krishna? This is what I wanted to talk about today. Without going into all those chapters. So one of the questions is, oh, Krishna is always so far away, and blah, 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 how do I get hold of him? He's so elusive, and I try and do this and try and do that. Okay? So there's a materialistic way of looking at God. God is millions of miles away in some heaven. Millions, trillions of miles away. Miles away. There's a kind of Vedic way of looking at it, which isn't quite right, but people do this. you know, I'm a million births away from God, I'm a million births closer to God, so I'm a number of births away from God. From acquiring Krishna, away from being pure to get Krishna. But the Bhakti text tells something a bit more simpler than that. You okay? Your water?
No, I've got a bit of a chest thing. I'll just go outside and have a cough.
Yeah. So we'll rewind when you come back into the summary. Millions of miles away. Okay. And then the Bhakti way of looking at it is there's only one distance between you and Krishna. There's one thing that is could be almost no distance, or could be a million miles. Okay? And that is desire. Now, Satyananda Swami did this wonderful talk last year in Berlin, where he was trying to explain this to the congregation there. And he said, try not to look for love. Instead, destroy the walls between you and love. Okay. I'll do it again. Okay. All right?
Sorry.
Yeah, that's right. So, no, what the Bhakti Yoga's text tells us, rewind, cartoon, that the distance between us and Krishna is simply desire, the nature of our desire. Okay? So as I was saying, Satyananda Swami was giving a talk last year in Berlin, and he said, the way to look at the distance between you and Krishna is the nature of the desire. And he quoted the poet Rumi, and he said, try not to look for love, instead tear down the walls between yourself and love. Okay. Love of God. Right. So, where is God? Where is God? Where is God? No, the barriers between you and God are in your mind. The nature of your desires form those barriers. And through the chanting process, what we're trying to do is alter the nature of those desires. Okay. So basically, there's two kinds of desires we can have. There's material desires, okay, and there's desires for Krishna. As Prabhupada is saying at the end of the Bhagavad Gita. Right? And what chanting does, even if it's done without love at the start, even if it's done half awake, but with some sincerity and no offence, is it will reduce the material desires accumulated over millions of births. And what we do in this process, bhakti process, right, is that the soul has a natural tendency to love God, but it has all these barriers between himself and God. So all we're doing is we're tearing down these barriers by chanting. Right? We're actually repolishing the vintage cars upon rusty until we find the metal underneath it. That's what we're doing. That's our process. Okay. So realigning our desires. And because the material world is subject to Krishna's control, chapter 10, verse 8, Bhagavad Gita, right? As soon as you say his name, he's the same as his name, and therefore you're purified. Okay? And the way that works scientifically, in terms of jnana yoga, the last 6 chapters, I've talked about many times. So, in order to create the material world for all these naughty souls, let's say this is Krishna here. Looks like a tin man from Wizard of Oz. I'm sure you'll forgive me for that. Right? He basically expands himself as something called Mahavishnu. And through the pores of the skin of Mahavishnu, each breath, millions of universes come out with their own little Vishnus, called Galpa-Daksaya Vishnu. Okay? Right? And when the material energy is created, material worlds are created by Brahma, through Galpa-Daksaya Vishnu's stem from his navel, every subatomic particle has Krishna in it as the Kisora Daksaya Vishnu. So by chanting his name, because he's the super consciousness, it's explained in the Bhagavad Gita, if I chant his name here, he's able to hear me. Because he's constantly everywhere. It's not like this idea that he's millions of miles away from heaven. All of his energy within himself, the spiritual and material energy, he's present constantly all the time as a consciousness. At the same time, he's completely independent and playing with his friends. Yeah? Now, human beings can't understand that, because for us, night has to follow day. The idea of night and day at the same time doesn't make sense. But we know in the spiritual world, from the Srimad Bhagavatam, that there are forests where Krishna plays, where you go around one corner and it's snowing, you go around another corner and the sun's out, you go around another corner, it's raining, all this stuff is happening simultaneously because he feels like it, and he can make it rain and snow or whatever simultaneously. It kind of blows our minds when you read about this. Right? But Krishna is here right now. We're talking about him. He's very aware that we're talking about him right now. Right? And most time he's enjoying it. Okay? So we've got to have this awareness when we chant Krishna's name. We have to understand Krishna's actually there. He's like, whoop, someone's chanting my name. That's interesting. How are they chanting my name? And sometimes you're chanting your name with such an intent to purify yourself. That intent, rather than the sound might be a bit scrappy, but the intent, because he's also the super soul in your heart as well, he's immediately present. And this is very interesting. It's been really trying. You know? And you can feel that. You wake up very early in the morning and chant, and you have no other motive but trying to improve yourself. It really attracts the Lord. He's like, oh, this person is trying to get out of the material world. This is interesting, or maybe I'll help them a little bit. Or her. Make sense so far? Yeah. Any questions at this point? Okay? No. Okay. I'm trying to keep it simple without going to all these chapters and going over because that gets too much. Right? So Krishna, Prabhupada, he does use in the Bhagavatam, the first 3 cantos, he does mention in the commentaries chapter 15 of the Bhagavad Gita. So I'll just go there for a moment. I've gone completely off my script, by the way. You know, it doesn't matter. Right? So he talks about this idea of the banyan tree. Right? So there's a tree which is sort of reflected. This is the material world, right? Lots of branches, a tree, right? And the leaves of the Vedic hymns, he says, all that sort of stuff. And it's reflection of the tree in the spiritual world. Right? And this growth and entanglement of the twigs and branches of this tree by the soul is to do with the wrong desires. Right? And what Prabhupada says is all this travelling from lifetime to lifetime, to universe to universe, to ladybird, tiger, to whatever it is, you know, to your next door neighbour, whatever it is, all this travelling in between different lifetimes, it's all to do with desires being misplaced. So you get another fruit, another body, another body, another body. You carry out fruit of action in material world in more bodies. But if you chant his name and do bhakti, what happens is you're basically suddenly picking up a giant axe and going smash into the middle of this tree, into the bottom of the trunk of this tree. That's what you're starting to do. Going smash and smash and smash. You're smashing down these branches, which is all the previous material pleasures you've had. You know, you were a tiger 15 lifetimes ago, and you enjoyed killing some cattle, and you're kind of suffering a little bit of that in this life from that. And then you kind of did something that you were going to get a form of a demigod in this life, but you didn't quite do it right, so you're now a human. You know, all these horrible activities and positive and negative activities that you've had, you're just smashing them through. Because ultimately this whole tree, this reflective tree, is subject to Krishna, and Krishna is his holy name. Right? This is why the chanting becomes so effective. Because what you're doing is, you're deleting the person you think you are, but actually that person is the rust covering the true metal of what you are.
So can you repeat?
Yes, so you're deleting, so you think you're this person. Like, I remember I used the example of the body is the hardware, the computer, the soul is the user, and the mind, the psychology is your software, and eventually you're recoding your software. Remember I talked about that a few weeks ago? So what you're doing with this chanting and this bhakti is you're actually reprogramming all the conditioning from all the previous lives. Okay? So you're basically removing, so one of the essences of the first 3 cantos of Bhagavatam is to understand that you're not the person that is this material person. The soul is aloof from that. It's just been covered up. Right? So to give you an example, if for some reason I press the button here, turn this room into a blender, and I blended all of our personalities together into one Pradeep's head, right? I'm teaching to them, someone's on their phone, always not using them. Right? turn it to Pradeep's head, right? And we all appeared in Pradeep's head, all our different personalities. Right? Pradeep would be very confused. Right? And he would be like, look, what's going on? I don't normally like cornflakes, but now I'm putting ketchup box in them. What's going on? You know, it's all weird. And today, my God, I'm going walking. I hate walking. What's happened to me? You know, it's be very confusing. So suddenly people go, they're in their 50s or 70s, and they go, do you know what? I never used to like walking in a swimming pool before, or swimming, but suddenly I found I like it. Because they haven't discovered this part of themselves. Right? Which is some things happened in previous lives, but still haven't discovered it as well. So we don't actually know the full extent of this covering. We don't know the full extent of it. But what we're now doing is we're rubbing it out slowly. Sometimes people chant for 10 years, regularly, and what happens one day is they go, you know what? Every single time someone cut me up in traffic, I had this perfect swear word for that moment. But now I don't react. It's really weird. It's like a different person. These sort of things happen to people. Because what's happening is the kind of reactions to the material world are changing. And you probably found that if you're chanting regularly, some things are starting to change a little bit for you. Does that make sense? Yeah. So it's work, but as you go on, as you get a bit more sincere, what happens in your workshop of your mind is you actually start to go, well, I might as well start looking for where the rust is. So before it's like just chanting. But then you go, oh God, that's a horrible thought. I can't remember I had a thought like that about that person. And it may not be that horrible, it may be like, God, I'm doing better than me at work, I'm doing this, you know. Wow, that person's done this. Oh my God, you know. Why am I thinking about them like that? They're just souls that are lost, covered up like I am. And suddenly you go, oh, I've got a problem here. I keep judging people without really looking at why they're doing the things they are. I don't have that emotional intelligence that I should have. And then you go, that's a bit of rust, that's a bit of conditioning. That presumption is a bit of conditioning, not seeing people as part of God. So I need to work on that. So we'll start actively working on the rust. Before we're just hitting and missing, like when people start chanting, it's like a big piece of rust on the metal and just randomly putting bits away, working on this corner over here, doing that corner. We don't know what we're doing. But over time, as we start to see bits of ourselves, the inner bits of ourselves, we can then focus on the things we need to work at. Of course, in the material world, you're probably going to be lusty, materially lusty towards the opposite sex. That's a common thing, not just in this cult, all religious denominations have tried out a process for dealing with that, or a procedure to deal with that. But what Prabhupada is giving you is Krishna, who's in charge of all material lust. Who's the ultimate board wiper. You know, I can wipe this board with just this cloth, but for someone to come along and just go wipe it automatically, that's Krishna. Okay, so he can get rid of even the desires. You go, God, I hope no one figures out I've got that desire. You know, I keep going to these group sessions. But Krishna will get rid of that. Whatever that thing that you think you can't be got rid of, he can get rid of that too, right? Because as soon as you're going towards Krishna, the material energy can have no impact. That's explained throughout the Bhagavad Gita and the Bhagavatam, right? Because it's under his control. Ahamsa Rasa Pravam, chapter 10, verse 8. Material energy cannot influence that space. Once you want this journey, once you start this journey, you will come out of the material world. It's a question of when. You can do it this life or 2 lives from now. It's up to you. Whatever you want to put in. It's like any other hobby, you know. My life, I could have been a snooker player. I could have maybe been a tennis player. I could have maybe done other things, but I didn't practice, so I didn't get that. You know, so it's a question of like if you want to practice more, you'll get better at it. If you look at Bhagavad Gita, chapter 4, verse 11, very important verse, it explains to you that as each person surrenders unto me, I reward them accordingly. Yeah, you can say chapter 4, verse 11. Very famous verse, like one of the key verses to know. It's cold in there actually. Verse 11. Yeah? As each surrender unto me, I reward them accordingly. Yeah? So how you do put the effort in your chanting, when you do it, you know, what's going on in your head, how you want to get rid of the problems you have. Not that you won't have problems, of course you'll have problems, you've been conditioned in the material world for many lives. You'll have problems chanting. But how sincere are you to get over those problems? You know, you can take 2 soldiers with the same war injury in a rehabilitation clinic. They've lost their legs and they've got maybe had a bit of a stroke as a result of explosive going off on the main high road in Afghanistan or whatever it is. The mentality of the soldier will depend on the recovery. Right? Recovery will depend on the mentality. Right? Exact same injury. The nurses will tell you that in rehab. Okay? So your illness for many, many lives, material fever, depends on your sincerity in the rehab clinic. Right? How much you're going to listen to the nurse, which is the proper parts words. Okay? And that will depend on how quickly you get back to walking normally again. But it's entirely up to the patient. There's plenty of sort of studies you can get on YouTube now where people do side-by-side studies of recovery of not just war veteran stroke patients' recoveries and so on. And a lot of it's just in the mind, how they approach these things with the mentality, positive or negative mindset. And what we're hopefully trying to create in Discourse, and we're moving towards that, is an environment of mutual encouragement, so we can help each other do this. And the reason for this is quite simple. If you want to go back in the spiritual world, where every single living entity, its only interest is to help Krishna, they'll be helping each other to please Krishna. There is no selfishness there, in the way we understand it. Right? So to get out of here, one of the characteristics you must have as a devotee is to be selfless. Okay? Your interest must be, the devotee next to me, how can I help them? Because that's the attitude of the souls that live in the spiritual world. Otherwise, you're going to go in the spiritual world and you're going to be like, well, what about me? You're like, what kind of comment is that? That'll be an alien comment. I can go to another planet, imagine going to another planet like in Star Trek, and there's no selfishness. They go, what about my food? We're like, what do we do? So in the spiritual world, it's not me doesn't exist. It's like, what can I do for Krishna? How can I help you do something for Krishna? What can you do for Krishna? How can I help that? So the more we develop this kind of reverse the psychology of the world we've been brought in, that we've been battered in our heads as children, make sure something you do better than everyone else at school. Make sure you get the job first. Me, you, I, me, mine. As soon as you start reversing that through bhakti, you'll be get towards the spiritual mentality of how do I help others serve Krishna? As soon as Krishna sees that, your entire devotional practice accelerates. Right? They say in Bhakti Yoga, if you give mercy, you get mercy. The more mercy you give to others, the more you receive. You have to look for it. Krishna's already there, arranging it all for you. Right? Pleasure taker or pleasure giver? Prabhupada is making that very clear at the end of the Bhagavad Gita. God, living entity in his original position is pure spirit. He's just like an atomic particle of the Supreme Spirit. Thus, Lord Krishna may be compared to the sun, and the living entities to sunshine. Because the living entities are the marginal energy of Krishna, they have a tendency to be in contact either with the material energy or the spiritual energy. In other words, the living entity is situated between the two energies of the Lord. And because he belongs to the superior energy of the Lord, he has a particle of independence. By proper use of that independence, he comes in the direct order of Krishna. Thus he obtains his normal condition in the pleasure-giving potency, the very last sentence of the Bhagavad Gita, after the commentary. The pleasure giver of the Lord. So then we just need to do an audit. We need to go into, imagine there's a management committee, and we go in there every week and go, I want my report back. This week, on Tuesday, how many times a day did I think about Krishna first? How many times did I think about myself first? And if you keep doing that, very quickly over time, you won't be thinking about yourself at all. You just be going, now I'm going to go to the bus stop. Give you an example, because I'll give you my own practical examples. I only have all of Prabhupada's books, like if I'm a Royal Marine in the British Army, the British Navy, I have lots of grenades in my pockets. I have a book here, one of Prabhupada's books here, two in my pocket. I'm wandering around the wall, I'm going, hi, how's it going, how's the weather? Have you seen this? Start walking with them and give them the book, right? I go, okay, if I'm going to drive past a bus stop at 8:30 in the morning, this bus stop, there's always two very bored old ladies on this bus stop. They have nothing to do. So the first few times I go, are you bored? Are you bored? The third time I give them one of Prabhupada's books. Right? So you're constantly in the world giving mercy. You know that this material energy is about getting people back to Krishna. That's why Krishna's created this place. Right? So let's start playing with the purpose of it. Right? You can always find something to do or someone to help. Right? You know, I used to tell law students, you know, a law student asked me recently, he said, throughout your career, in all these big cases, how did you attract all these clients? I said, law students, don't listen to me. When you live for yourself, you're living at 1% of your human potential. I want to put Krishna consciousness aside for a moment, just think about normal moral philosophy here. Right? When you live for everyone else, then you start seeing what you need to do to help everyone around you. Then you have to work harder, then you have to enforce your skill set harder and harder. Yes, you can work like a donkey for yourself, but you won't find your full capacity doing that. In your spiritual journey, you will be highly limiting yourself if you don't get to the point eventually where your primary focus is helping everyone else. Just you do your 16 rounds, or whatever, however rounds you do your regulative principles, but your principal aim is to make Krishna happy. If your aim is to make Krishna happy, you're always going to do all your rounds, you're never going to fall foul of the principles because you want Krishna to be happy. And then you're going to be looking for the next opportunity you can find to make Krishna happy. And then you kind of nailed it. That's bhakti, really. You know, there isn't much more to it than that. The difficulty is we're so rusty at being selfless. We're so conditioned to being selfish by this world. Look at the consumers. You walk down the road and someone's trying to sell you a new phone that you've only bought 3 days ago. You know, so consumerism, me, I, me, mine, bigger house, me. How are you doing? I'm not this body. I'm just somebody who's using Krishna's energy to move around in, so I can do some work for Krishna. You have no interest independent of Krishna. Middle of the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 9, verse 27. Don't do anything independent of me. Independent of me, you won't have any problems. I'm controlling this energy. Suddenly the energy will come and work perfectly in harmony with what you're doing, because it's designed to work for me, it's my energy. Right, I'll stop there, I'm ranting. Okay, and we can now break into sort of questions and then where we are with people are trying to struggles and issues and things like that. So, without getting to any more. Is that all right? So far?
Yeah, I don't know if you're right, but
Yeah.
maybe I could put forward a comment, a question.
Yes, go for it.
I've come to the realisation that I'm not so sure that I want to be Krishna conscious.
Yeah. Okay.
That's where I'm at the moment.
Yeah. Okay.
And I don't know how to deal with that.
Okay.
And so for me, it's like, you know, I'm aware that originally I was interested in the idea that I could be happy by becoming ultimately a pure devotee, but I don't see, I've never seen a pure devotee, I don't know what they're like.
Yeah.
And my presumption was that they would be experiencing some state of consciousness that would be the Krishna conscious equivalent to tantric yoga, you know, the self-realization.
Yeah.
But I've not come across a pure devotee. I wouldn't know one, I fell over one,
Yeah.
and there's nothing that I have seen or read that explains to me what the nature of prema bhakti is or what bhakti is.
Yeah.
You know, what you've just said is, you know, you're pretty well on your way to bhakti if you go out and think of how you can help others to be Krishna conscious. And I understand that as a mechanism, as an action, as karma, but phenomenologically, you know, that seems to be very different to what I understand a devotee that is in a pure state of prema.
Okay, so that's a very good question. Okay, I like that question. I like that question very much. Okay. So, there's an easy answer to your question.
I'll take that one.
And then that one, you don't really like that one, so I'll give you. So prema is actually defined. So in nectar of devotion, remember at the start I said Rupa Goswami? That's what we're. So nectar of devotion by Rupa Goswami. Right? Well, it's a summary of Rupa Goswami's work, without going into too much detail. Prabhupada explains what bhava is and what prema is, how you get to prema, okay? And what the symptoms of bhava and prema are. So you have Vaini Bhakti. I've done this in a separate class actually, a few weeks ago. Okay? So that's regulative practice of Bhakti Yoga. And you get to bhava, and there's 9 symptoms of bhava. to recognize somebody in bhava, and then you get to prema, and they're actually symptoms of prema. These are defined in nectar devotion. Okay? And the simple answer to your question is, if you're in prema, right, you don't talk about being in prema. Right? So someone's in prema bhakti, if they ever do reveal someone in prema bhakti, it's probably only going to be a person who's in prema bhakti, right? So you're never going to hear about it, right? So the only thing you can do, and it's very important that if you haven't done this, anybody in ISKCON, you have to read the first 24 chapters of Nectar Devotion, right? Because that tells you what you're aiming for. Without a goal, without knowing the symptoms of those goals, you're going to go. Because we are conditioned in seeing something tangible. We come with a sense, a certain amount of faith, and a certain amount of things that have to bridge beyond faith, that have to be practical, right? And that depends on the piety we've done in our previous lives. At the end of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna does not say to Arjuna, you have to fight. He says, now you do whatever you want to do. I have explained to you what my view is. Right? No one can compel you to become Krishna conscious, right? Nor should they do that, because that's not what Krishna would want. Because the essence of certainly bhava and prema, Vedic Bhakti is different, because that's done practice to have some obligation, right? Is you're developing this idea of a voluntary love of God, right? And that voluntary love of God can only come if the piety exists after many, many lives. But I was giving a class on this somewhere, but sometimes people say to me, well, how come this guy became a Swami when he was 30 years old? And I've been doing chanting for 50 years and I haven't done that. Somebody did tell me that recently. And I said, well, because it's all cumulative work over previous lives. Okay? So you might come into this with 30%, and you might be a bit lackluster and languid and not very focused, and by the end of your life you might go to 32%. Someone might come in this well with 8%, work their arse off, right? And get to, they say, really bhava and prema is when you get rid of 70% of your anarthas from previous lives. Okay, I don't want to go into all that at the moment, but it's something you can get to the point where Krishna's there, you're having those feelings, you have a relationship with God, God appears to you, talks to you, right? These things do happen, but it's not something, because Krishna very much, the whole purpose of the material world, it's tough because when you get out of it, when you get your probation or your bail and you're like, okay, now you're at home, Krishna doesn't want you to come back here. You have to come out of here with the conviction that you don't want to be here and have a relationship with God. Otherwise, you can't get back to the spiritual world, right? So you've got to put the effort in to do that. Now, whether you want to leave or not be Krishna conscious or be Krishna conscious, it's very important you remember this one thing. Chapter 15, verse 15 of Bhagavad Gita. You cannot forget Krishna unless Krishna wants you to forget him. Nor can you remember him unless he wants you to remember him.
And what does that mean?
Well, that means that ultimately you are one of the biggest lessons of Bhagavad Gita is you're not a doer of the acts.
You're not
You're not a doer of your acts. You're not a doer of your acts.
I'm not the doer of my act.
Yeah. So if you were to fall away and go, I'm not interested in Krishna consciousness anymore, that's Krishna not being interested in you. Like from a devotion, from a bhakti point of view, that's not you not wanting to be interested in Krishna. So you know that's something to kind of consider. So within that is the idea of you want or you don't want. Krishna will facilitate your desires. Right, in the material world, tigers, pigs, trees, oak trees, plum trees, lemon trees, they don't have to exist. These are desires of living entities accumulated millions of lifetimes. They're manifesting these things. Right? I didn't have to take this preposterous body that's going to get ill and die. I was stupid enough to do it. Right? So I'm here. Okay? But that was my wish. Now I want to kind of go, I've got to the point where I don't want to come back here anymore. And that's a realization you have to have somehow. And that comes after many, many births. Right? So if I go, I don't want to do this anymore, that's Krishna saying, you still want to enjoy the material world. There's nothing wrong with that. You will come back to me. If you've done a little bit of bhakti at some point, nothing is lost. Right? You are on that eternal journey back.
I got convinced,
Yeah.
when I first came to Krishna consciousness, that I don't want to come back to this planet, to this world, ever again. There's no question, no issue about that. It's that I don't fully comprehend or apprehend or understand what it actually means to be Krishna conscious. I mean, part of that is because I sort of opted out for a few years, and after I left here, I just went out and I never forgot Krishna. I was saying that to Guru Anyadas when I bumped into him in the restaurant. I said, because he asked me what have you been doing, I said, oh, whatever, been fixing up this and that.
Yeah.
But I never forgot Krishna. In fact, Krishna is always part of my mind on a daily basis, in one way or another. And but what I realise now that I'm sort of getting back into it, even though I'm saying I don't want to necessarily, is the more I get into it, the more I realise that I really don't understand what this is about. What you're telling me, I'm hearing, and I understand it to some extent, as much as words can communicate things. But I think for me right now, what I need to do is go and read the Nectar of Devotion, because is that different to the Nectar of Instruction?
Yeah.
That's the little one,
Yeah.
and the Nectar of Devotion is the bigger one.
Yes, this is a summary study of Bhakti Rasmita Sindhu, which means the ocean, effectively the ocean of joy, of devotion.
Yeah, I met a Devi Dasi a number of years ago, and she suggested I should read that one, and I haven't.
Yeah.
Although I was in a bookshop 3.5 years and I've never read it.
Yeah, but if you don't be too harsh on yourself, if you're thinking about Krishna, that is Krishna consciousness. Yeah, as long as you're not like...
Well, see, this is where I get confused, because as I understand Krishna consciousness now, and from what I see with the devotees and the brahmacharis and the pujaris and all of the devotees, is that it's 100% commitment to Krishna conscious in terms of the action, in terms of the dharma, the karma. That would be Krishna conscious, because that is what their mind is occupied by. But if I, jump on the bus, which is what I do to get home, and on the bus, and I'm thinking, oh, there's this 24/7 up the road. They've got some really good crisps, and I know that the owners of that particular company are the people that follow Siddhaswarupananda Paramahamsa. Those chips are in fact prasadam. Nobody knows that, but I know that. I'm going to go grab a packet of those because I'm hungry. But I also know that they are not very good for me, because of chips. So I've completely forgotten about Krishna consciousness.
Okay, so these are all very good questions. And I think they can be answered. I think so. These are things we have covered in these workshops over the last year or so.
And I'm also not a good bus driver because it's not very pleasant.
All right. Well, that's a different. I'm not trying to help you with that one, but there's quite a few different issues there. So look, there's 9 forms of bhakti, right? Yeah, we know what they are. My 9-year-old will tell me if I get it wrong on this. So there's you start off by hearing, chanting, remembering, which is what you're doing, right? Yeah. Then there's deity worship. Whoops. Then these are all in Nectar of Devotion, by the way. So you'll have this in there.
Yeah.
I can't remember the chapter off the top of my head. You have to Google it. Then you've got prayers. You've got friendship with the Lord. Then you've got service to the Lord, Hanuman being an example of that. And eventually you get to Atman Nivandam, which is complete surrender. But these are all different forms of bhakti. Any of those forms, I think I did this last week, the week before, any of those forms get you to different levels of relationship with God. So how well you do any of those will depend how you get over to Krishna. These are just the tool, effectively. So you could hear Bhagavatam classes on YouTube 8 hours a day and become a prema bhakta. Okay? You could do deity worship and get to the same place as hearing those classes. You could chant 10 hours a day and get to prema. Right? These are the things you do. These are the results of the things you do. I did do a separate class on this in detail. So you need to get Nectar of Devotion. Look at that. It's available on the internet anyway. It's a shame I don't remember the chapters. So chapter 18 talks about Bhava. I think 1920 will go on to Prema. What we have to remember in ISKCON is, because we are Rupa Nagas, followers of Rupa Goswami, is that there's the regulative route and there's a spontaneous route, and they're actually side by side. Right? Spontaneously means sometimes someone will see a picture of Krishna, and they're walking down the road and see it in a shop window, and they will just go ecstatically crazy. Right? Right? And that is Bhakti, that is love of God. Okay? Right? They may not share that with anybody, they may not want to share that with anybody, but that's a sign of a very deep relationship with God. You know? And that's all explained in nectar of devotion. Ecstatic symptoms, spontaneous symptoms, what is spontaneity. And ultimately, the point of all this Raganuga Bhakti, right, that there is a point to it, which is to follow a Ragatmika devotee. And those exist in the spiritual world, right? And there are basically 5 types of relationships that exist with Krishna, okay? And 12 manners of those relationships. I won't do that, that's in nectar of devotion. Right? And you will fit into one of those. Right? We are supposed to be assistants of assistants of assistants of Ragatmika devotees who are mostly gopis. Right? Yeah, and Rupa Goswami in the spiritual world, Rupa Manjari, are the assistants of the gopis. I prepare their clothes and do various things for them. In very, very pure soul. Yeah. So he's giving that to us from the spiritual world. He's telling us what we have to do in this place to get access to the spiritual world and be ready for the spiritual world. So that's a whole other topic. We haven't done some of this Ragatmika Bhakti and all that stuff, but we'll do it at some point. So yeah, I recommend you, if you're into this, if you're curious about these questions, you definitely need to read the first 22, 23 chapters. And they're not easy chapters to read. I mean, it's pretty high end, you know. But if you've got the questions, you probably crack through. If you don't understand something, take a picture and send it to me. I'll try and confuse you more. By replying. Cool. So that's, yeah. So all the questions you're asking are about. I was getting the chips from the shop, and that, but you're trying to link to Krishna somehow.
Yeah.
Your sentiment's in the right direction, so that just needs to be cultivated. Lord Chaitanya calls that the devotional creeper, which comes out the ground very slowly, and it can be stepped on very quickly. There are various things explaining nectar of devotion you can do to kill your bhakti very quickly. Right? And then you will, if you have a little bit of sincerity, Krishna will multiply that sincerity by 1,000. Pull that creeper up, you know, as you come towards him. You know, I used to go in Harinam when I was 22, that's the last couple of weeks ago, and I'd just be looking for a pub. So, you know, there's a pub, I can escape. And afterwards I go, God, that was great Harinam, wasn't it? And I've got 3 pints of beer. You know, that's how I started. And millions of other stories like that. But something happens, there's something that you keep coming back. You know, you'll have days when you have days and go, what a load of nonsense. Yeah. I leave in the morning and back in the afternoon and back in the temple. You know, I don't know what happened, but maybe I'll give it another go with reluctance, you know. But I keep coming back, I keep like, I went away and came back. You know, that sort of jilted lover approach is still an approach that Krishna recognises and will get you back on track. But you wouldn't be here tonight unless Krishna arranged it.
Yeah, no, for me it's like there really isn't any alternative in a sense.
Yeah.
You know, without being melodramatic, you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. You know, that's kind of how I feel, not about Krishna, but about me and my relationship to it. Because I know ultimately this is the way to go. You know, in my heart I can see that. I'm just not sure that I'm up for it.
Well, we've all been conditioned after many, many lives, you know, billions of lives, and sometimes on tired mornings, I'm into my 4th round, and it's some certain hour in the morning, and I'm going, maybe I'm just crazy. What am I doing? This is just, what if this is just, you know, and I just carry on.
Yeah, I've only done 16 rounds twice, and each time it's taken 4.5 hours.
It's brilliant.
You know, it was actually a pretty amazing experience, I must say so. And I did get an interesting insight. However, the idea of doing 4.5 hours on a daily basis.
But you'll be, it's
just
like
makes me around. But,
it's like if I put you in a 4-wheel car and show you how to change gear, you go around the track not in 1 hour, not in 1 minute 38 seconds. You'll do it in 45 minutes. You don't want to destroy a £500,000 car,
Mm.
and you don't want to crash into the wall and die. Right, so eventually you'll do it, you'll have a good lap time, eventually.
Yeah.
You just got to keep at it, you know. And that comes, it took me ages to do it. I didn't do it quickly. What will happen is you'll probably end up doing it really quickly and realise that you're not doing it properly, and then slow it down again. Because we go through a phase of like, oh, I can now do this, I can climb Kilimanjaro. Then when we run up Kilimanjaro, eventually go, well, really enjoying the view going up Kilimanjaro, so we need to slow down again. So that's the process that we all go through.
Mm.
I've done a bit up Kilimanjaro, too lazy, but anyway, that matters. Right,
Okay, thank you.
that's right. So you're not going to leave that?
So,
You're not going to leave that?
what now? I'm going to do a run.
Okay. Next question.
No,
So no, that's important. I enjoyed that. That was good. That's good.
Yeah, no.
Actually.
Can I just
Yeah,
add my,
yeah.
I think, like for me, how it happened, things won't move until you're genuinely seeking, and somehow when the time is right, it can be in a form of truly seeking that connection with the God, or it can come in the form of a guru, or like if you're seeking, now that question for you, if it is on the top of your head and you're like genuinely making that effort, you might travel, or things might come to you in a form of a devotee or a video or someone who's wanting to help you, but not until we are ready and genuinely seeking. So
Yeah, thank you.
Well, Krishna arranges everything for the right time. Every time we look back and go, oh, yeah, he was right not to let that happen at that point, and whatever. You know, so. You had some questions because you put them on the group chat. I read
yes,
them. Yeah.
We understand personality, like how God has a personality. Similarly, we are also a sum total of so many things as a person, and then there's a concept of body, and then there's mind, and then there's soul. So what are the things to like let go of in terms of like still these 30 years you are this identity, this person, this role, and you're doing, as a person, as a professional. So but there are so many things that are not really needed, and and there's so many concepts, so I'm just looking at myself as a body, and then like you said, a subtle body, which itself is a mind, is a person on its own, which is wanting you to have desires, do things. So all this while we sometimes find faults in other people or situations, but then we realize it's your mind, it is not in the person or the situation, it is the mind which, from being your enemy, how can I train the mind to be my friend or someone who is listening to me, so that the person behind the mind, that is the soul, it's like soul is stuck within the body and the mind.
Yeah.
And you don't want any of it, but then it's there and it's stuck. Yeah.
So Krishna says the mind, his famous verse, mind is the best friend and worst enemy, because it's the conduit through which we can go into the material energy and enjoy it. Once we enjoy it in material energy, and it's the conduit that allows us to go to Krishna. We exercise it. It's the software, how we move our hardware. And the way ultimately to understand is in chapter 7, verse 4 of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says what his energies are, what he's created to reform the living entities. And what he's done is he's created the mind, the false ego, intelligence, the concept of the mind, the concept of the false ego, the concept of intelligence created by Krishna to allow us to basically test how much we're attached to material enjoyment and how much we want to come off it. That's why he's created those things, right? They're like special types of, imagine you put kids' armbands on when they swim. And the armbands you blow up to a certain amount, depending on the child. Because you want the child to learn to swim on its own, so you may not inflate them completely, so the child just floats and doesn't have to do anything. Okay? So these natures that we've been given have been allocated very carefully by Krishna, which form our mind, and our tendencies of our mind. So what we have to understand is they're Krishna's energies. Throughout that chapter 7, he explains ultimately they're subject to me. So when you bring those energies, when you use that conduit towards him, then it rectifies itself. It doesn't go left, right and centre. Otherwise it's almost impossible controlling it away from, the material problem could be not sexual lust, it could be you just eat 6 bars of chocolate every morning. That's your material problem. And sometimes, more problems I hear actually over time in devotees are more eating problems than any other problem. So I keep eating this, keep eating that, keep eating chocolate. And that's because, you haven't realised that whatever you do, Krishna says in 9.27, whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you think, you do it for me. So you have to eventually learn to say, where is Krishna in this act I am doing? It's a proactive, deliberate process, So it's like a teacher saying to you, you can paint whatever you want on a canvas, but you have to use the colour green, right? And you go, I'm going to paint, I don't know, a red car, but how am I going to put green in it? And you might put a little bit, tiny amount of green because it's a red car you've got to paint. But somehow you'll find a way of merging that green in there. So every single day you'll have a job, and you'll eventually work out how every single part of your job relates to Krishna. And that's just the audit process. I work on multi-million pound cases, but they normally are going to funding different ISKCON projects in different parts of the world, or some are going to help to a devotee do something, and eventually you just be doing it all for Krishna. It might be the same thing that you were doing before. When I was doing all that stuff, I was buying fast cars on there and Porsches and all that many years ago, but now I don't do that stuff anymore. You just change what you're doing it for. You do the same thing, you're just doing it for a different purpose. And then you look at it and go, how much of that compared to last year am I doing the same thing for Krishna? Is it 10% more, 11% more? How do I, like a Formula 1 driver, how do I find an extra lap per second and then lap? And as you do that, you'll keep improving. There's a great book by James Clear called Atomic Habits, how people, if they had patience, could achieve something by improving 1% a day, 1% a week. It'd be 50% better at something by the end of the year. And it's just that little bit more mindfulness on how was I doing it last week or last month, how am I doing it this month? Where am I progressing to? What's my goal at the end of this year? And like as I said to you, when you were doing 1 round a day, I said, look, that's fine, that's very consistent. Now at the end of the month, do 2 rounds on the last day of the month. And then you went beyond that, right? You went beyond that. So you've got to go, okay, I've done 2 rounds once. Don't overdo it. So okay, every quarter, I'm going to have a day where I do 4 rounds. So it's not pressuring yourself. I can do that. It's just 20 minutes or 30 minutes or whatever it is. So you just go a little bit further than you are. And Krishna, seeing that sincerity, will then multiply that in ways you cannot imagine. So you have to have the faith. And chicken and egg, you have to chant to get the faith. And you have to have the faith to chant better. But it goes around in circles. Devotional journey is always intense progress. You hit a wall, then Krishna tests your perseverance, and you come back and you go again and you improve. You're going up like this, and you're going down a little bit and you're coming back higher. It's always a bit like that, because you are fighting what you've been doing for millions of births. But I think a lot of it's just in dovetailing, and 99% of our problems really, to be honest, really has to do with chanting. If you're chanting the holy name properly, or better and better constantly, from now to the point when you die, you're chanting it better, so you're not ill when you die, then you won't have a problem, because Krishna will see that and accelerate it in ways that you can't imagine. Your concerns are about things that your limited being abilities cannot think of. But Krishna can think of all those things. He's the perfect person. He's the absolute truth. He's the most beautiful of beautiful people. He's perfectly renounced. He's here, but also playing at the same time somewhere else. So he's not here. That's perfect renunciation. He killed everyone on the battlefield, but he used Arjuna to do it. He was completely detached. Didn't have to do anything. So it will be done. All you've got to show is a little bit more effort. It's like you were mentioning an example of going out until you're 17 years younger. It's like going out with a very difficult person that you're trying to go out with, and you just realise that this is the person you're going to have to end up with. That's what Krishna is. So you've got to just keep at it, not give up and go, oh, I'm just going for the easy girl or the easy guy, which is Maya. And that's, you've got to have that sort of absolute dead conviction. Some people can do it, without going to personal examples too much. Steve, anything? Any questions?
No, still good.
I'm like you, I'm trying to stay warm in here.
Yes. It all absorbs.
Any questions? You normally have something.
No.
You must have something. You're a student. You must have loads of questions. Okay. There's no more questions. I have to go home and eat that thing I should eat. I'm just kidding.
I just want to make a comment.
Yeah.
You were saying that how can I be Krishna conscious? You are. In a way you are. I feel it. I feel that you don't have to be a monk or anything to become Krishna conscious. You are thinking about, I'm going to eat that chips, I'm going to do this, I'm going to be here at the temple. You are in Krishna consciousness.
Yeah, there's also there's a false understanding. Initially there's an understanding if someone's in the temple all the time. I think we answered that question last November. That there's in your beginning stage of Krishna consciousness, it's not where you are that matters. It's where your mind is, and where your heart is that matters. You could be in the most awful job in the world, but be perfectly Krishna conscious, and be nowhere near a temple. But I think we've gone through that anyway. Just
you can have your own deities in the temple room, just in the house, in consciousness.
Yeah.
But yeah, you come here to associate with devotees, be with other like-minded people.
Yeah. The reason people don't know is a very simple thing, but the reason you go and see a deity is here.
If someone gets into Krishna consciousness, but when they start doing the seva and everything, but their mind is still in the material world.
Yeah.
So if they are trying to pray to him, does it still consider Krishna consciousness?
Yes, yeah, probably consider Krishna consciousness. And I think that the test of Krishna consciousness is basically, are you doing things inoffensively? Are you offending the Lord? If you're coming to the Lord inoffensively, sincerity might not be there at the start. You might not have piles of affection for the Lord. That's not important. But there's some recognition that this is maybe where I should be. Not even 100%, 5% or 1%. Maybe I should be, I'm not sure. Sometimes people come and they go, and they come back months later, and we've had that, in many other temples. We go away for 10 years, 20 years, 30 years. But they come back because they kind of figure it out. No, maybe that was the place I did have peace, whatever it was. But as long as it's not offensive, and especially not offensive to other devotees, Krishna doesn't like that because that's telling him that when you go to the spiritual world, you're going to cause a lot of trouble with all sorts of other very close confidants of his. So, but look, this is all doable. It's all doable by the way you chant. And if you've done 16 rounds once, you're definitely going to end up doing it permanently forever at some point. It's just going to happen. It's more important to do less but do it consistently. So if you do one a day, every single day at the same time, more sooner than you think you'll be doing 16 rounds a day. But it's more important to do, if it's half a round or 5 beads, even every day at the same time you'll be doing 16 rounds. I know people who've done 5 beads a day, but every day at the same time, and then a couple of years later, a few years later, are doing 16 rounds a day at the same time. Because the consistency that matters. This is just neurology. Forget about Krishna consciousness. If you want to get loads of people to join the gym at New Year's Day and become a gym goer for the rest of their life, what you do is you get them to go to the gym for 70 days and eat cake. And on day 71, they switched from cake to doing exercise, and they'll always go to the gym, and everybody's always doing exercise, because that's the way our minds form habits. And we talked about that as well. So just get yourself doing whatever it is. If it's 30 seconds, do it every single day.
At the same time?
Same time, preferably, yeah. So the brain gets into a routine. You know, this body, according to modern scientists, and apparently it's true, is ultimately designed to. It's an evolutionary creature, the brain. So it wants to think of this is the same environment. Lazy people have always survived evolution because they don't overthink. So when a saber-toothed tiger comes, they don't get eaten. So the brain is always trying to form habits. What's happened is that the neurological pathway to form habits hasn't been developed in kids because the modern education system is rubbish. So if you look at the most successful athletes, for example, they're all people who form habits very quickly. They don't have a lot of what we call neural resistance to forming habits. You know, in many fields of life, they've practiced changing and forming habits as a kid. You know, and disruption sometimes does that. So our brain is saying, this is my environment, I'm not going to overthink, I don't want to change it because a tiger might come and eat me, I don't want to overuse my reserves. So if something comes, I can run away. You know? That's how our neurology is designed. So the way to help use the brain in the right way is to get up at the same time every day for 70 days and do 5 minutes chanting, because then you'll always be able to do 16 rounds at some point, because the brain knows it's got to get up. It knows the environment's changed. Yeah, that's basic neurology. And you can get great books on this stuff. Habit Loop is one of the best books you can get by Charles Duhigg. In 1990, we scanned the brain in a different way than we've ever done in history. And so we've got a lot of insight now how neural clusters form. And people who meditate, they're less likely to get Alzheimer's because their neurons form very, very dense clusters because they're focusing on one thing constantly. Yeah. And the brain doesn't want to do that because it wants to think, there's a tiger, I need to run. So when it's chanting initially, it's like, you know, all this has happened, and oh, have I cooked that, or do I need to go do that? And then you're not thinking about the mantra when you start, but eventually you'll just be listening to the mantra. Because what's happened is the brain has been told that is the status quo environment. And what you want to do in ISKCON is you want to get people to that point before they quit. Because once they get to that point, they won't stop chanting. You know, it's that initial 3 to 4 month period, if that can be done consistently, they'll always end up doing it more and more.
And that happens quite quickly too, doesn't it?
Yeah. You're designed to do it once the brain thinks. It's like when you move house, it takes a while for the brain to adjust to the new house before it automates where everything is and does things in the dark and all that stuff. And there is a bit of neurology behind this. It's not, yes, Krishna is in charge of neurology, and sincerity will accelerate that process. You know, but there is a bit of neurology that's worth knowing. You know, but it's more important to listen to the mantra. You know, unless you're naturally proficient at it. But the listening is the important bit. I always say that you wouldn't go in front of the deity and go like this in the temple room, which is the equivalent of chanting that way is to just chant without listening to the sound, because it's the sound form of Krishna. So you're not using your ears. It's the same as going, Krishna, I'm here to come and see you. You know, that's how you're chanting, which Krishna is, well, okay, it's a start. You're in the temple room, but come on, you need to look at me. Good.
When I first started, it took me a long time to do it now, like hours and hours.
Yeah, don't need to.
And the mind was just scattered.
I never wanted to do it. I never wanted to do it because I knew as soon as I started chanting, I'll be doing it more and more, I'll get sucked into ISKCON. So I just left it as late as possible. You know, I do everything else, I clean the whole temple. But sitting down and chanting with everyone else, like, very reluctant. Because that was, for me, that was surrender, I wasn't ready for that. I wanted to party. But it happens, somehow it happens. Krishna somehow arranges it, well, he gives you a nice enough kick in the face at some point. And you go, oh, thank you.
I was getting up to 32, a couple of times 64.
Yeah.
But now I've dropped back to 16. And like you said, you're concentrating on the words and you want to hear it properly.
Yeah, we did this exercise a few weeks ago where you came up, didn't you? And I said, if I'm introducing you to everyone else, your name is Stephen Thomas Curry, right? And I said, Stephen Thomas Curry, Thomas Curry. This is Stephen Curry. And afterwards in the car, you said, how are you saying my name like that? So with chanting Krishna's names, it's the same. You don't want to say his name. Don't say his names like that because it's rude. You know, it's just basic. And the spiritual world is different to the material world, but it's not completely different.
That's when you get the real, that's when you get something out of it.
And because one day you'll sit down and you go, I'm not even going to do a round, and do the mantra 5 times, and we do it in a way that Krishna is going to smile. Completely selfless chanting, you know, and you're just trying to say his name with such, pronouncing every little thing would be like melting in your mouth. And that's accelerating your progress in ways you can't imagine. And the mantra is powerful, and the question is how are people doing it? That's how quickly, how they're doing it, they can do what they do in 5 years in a month, if they did it the right way. Sectionananda Swami, he does a lot of workshops on japa. Definitely worth watching as many as you can when you have spare time in the bath. Just put one on. The German Swami. You know, I think he's done tons of japa stuff now the last 5 years during COVID. It's on YouTube, it's free. And you can even do a round with him. I've sat with him and we started chanting, and I think I looked up and we were on round 24. And it's like we were doing it for 2 minutes. It was really weird. You know, we're just chanting, and we got closed our eyes and carried on. We were just, you know, there was no resistance whatsoever by the body to it, because you're listening, really listening. And you actually relax, actually. You know. The other thing to watch out for, as I've said, is the mouth. It's the hand counting the mouth. The mouth is the main instrument. What tends to happen with people is it starts to become a muscle exercise for the hand. That's not what it is. It's not this, I'm moving my hand constantly. The hand's just there reminding you to count what's going on from the mouth. The mouth is it's the driver of the activity. You know, and we're trying to hear the mantra. Because as soon as you say the mantra, as Krishna's here, you're seeing Krishna with the eyes, but you're hearing him with the ears. It's the same thing. So just say the mantra nicely and Krishna's there.
Is it incorrect when you go from one beat to the other and you're just finishing off the previous Maha Mantra, the previous round of that? So Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. And at that point I'm moving on to the next beat, Rama Rama, Hare Hare.
That's not problematic, but what I've noticed happens when I've done that or others have done that is sometimes they miss a beat because they've done that. That's something to be careful of. You might, if you're doing it slowly as you are, I don't think you probably are doing that. But I think that as you speed up, that might become a problem. Because you might do 3 and might have 3 beats, you might have only said it once. You're better off, if you're doing it that slowly as you are, you're better off just waiting, I think. And we did this workshop where we did it together. If your mind drifts, you just stick your hand up like this and you do that beat again. And what that does in the brain is it fuses your brain. It's forming a denser cluster because the concentration is increasing. It's like I'm going for a jog to run around a track, but now I'm going to put weights on my legs. And when I take them off, it's going to be a lot easier to run because your legs will be stronger, right? So that's what you're doing. If you stop and go, my mind's going to go. Doesn't matter if one round takes you 20 minutes. If you can do it with integrity, so that, now I'm thinking about the car wash tomorrow, haven't paid the rego and all the stuff, all this shit going in your head, just stop and go, come back to the mantra, do the mantra. If you're starting for the first few times in your life, or just getting going, use a clock, do 5 minutes or 2 minutes with the bead. Don't worry about how many rounds you've done, just do the time, but try and do those 2 minutes without the mind wandering too much. If it wanders, just stop. Doesn't matter if you've done 2 beats, it's irrelevant. Because Krishna is just looking for sincerity, he's not looking for anything else. He will do the rest of the work. Okay? You don't have to do 16 rounds, really, the whole time you're thinking about your favourite TV show. That's just completely pointless. Absolute waste of time. We will start off like that though, because we don't have, if you haven't done, this is one of the temples, Australia, I haven't seen too many Japa Sanghas, Japa training sessions. We don't have that in Australia so much. I don't know if they have it in some of the UK farms, but if you have a Japa Sangha you can join. In the UK there are quite a few, where people just openly talk about, I did this wrong, how do I do this? And then everyone will accelerate because people will tell them how to do it. Sometimes that's missing, so you get lots of people chanting here, I see, and they're chanting on their mobile phone. You might as well just go up to the deity and spit on it. Yeah. That's what you're doing, effectively. You're just going, Krishna, hey, I'll come to see you, and I'm walking around now. It's technically offensive. without being intentionally offensive. But it's almost the same thing. I've seen it tons of times here. I've seen all sorts of weird stuff. But that will hopefully will change as we move forward. Yeah, just do it once. You can get in your car after this, and you can just take one bead and just do it. I'm going to listen. Forget me. I'm irrelevant. And just listen to our bead. Say that's Krishna, and you can take that with you forever, for trillion lifetimes. That will get you back to Godhead. Because that's trying to please Krishna, not just being inoffensive. You're trying to please Krishna in that moment. That moment becomes infinite.
Sounds good.
Yeah. Krishna. Is that anything else? Okay, Balaji? Okay. Yeah. Are you okay? Yeah, so I'll bring a couple of heaters in here next time. It's a bit, at the moment, this time of year, it's a bit horrible.
I think they're closing now.
Oh, you're closing the heaters?
Yeah.